Can you, ima- can you imagine one tiny discovery flipping the whole world upside down? Well, back in 1848, that's exactly what happened in California. At the time, this was just a quiet, dusty land, barely on the map. No one could have guessed it was sitting on one of the biggest treasures in history. It all started with James W. Marshall, a guy just doing his job building a sawmill for a dude named John Sutter. One day, as he's working near the American River, something shiny catches his eye. At first, he couldn't believe it. Could it really be gold? Marshall tells Sutter, and the two try to keep it hush-hush. I mean, if word got out, their land could be overrun by strangers. But you know how secrets go, right? Someone talks, someone else hears, and boom, the whole world knows. By late 1848, whispers about gold in California started spreading like wildfire. It wasn't long before everyone wanted a piece of the action. Dreams of striking it rich turned into plans, and plans turned into a full-blown migration. The gold rush was on. So, here's the deal. California wasn't even officially part of the U.S. when gold was discovered. It had just been taken from Mexico after the Mexican-American War. The place was wild, untamed, and full of opportunity. Or at least, that's how people saw it. When President James K. Polk confirmed the gold rumors in a speech to Congress, it was game over. Thousands of people packed up everything they had, left their homes, and hit the road, or the sea. Ships were crammed with passengers while wagons rolled west. These travelers became known as the 49ers, named after the Big Rush in 1849. It wasn't just Americans either. People came from all over: China, Europe, South America. California turned into this crazy melting pot of cultures almost overnight. But let's not sugarcoat it. The journey to California? Brutal. We're talking months of walking, sickness, starvation, and sometimes not even making it there. People risked everything for just the chance at a better life. Let's be real. Who doesn't love the idea of striking it rich overnight? That's what the gold rush promised, and boy, people bought into it big time. You've got to remember, back in the 1800s, life wasn't exactly a walk in the park. People were desperate for a way out of poverty. Gold was seen as the answer. It wasn't just shiny. It was freedom, a new start, and maybe even a chance to become one of the wealthiest folks around. Letters and newspapers hyped up the gold rush like it was some kind of golden lottery, and people believed every word. Imagine selling your house, quitting your job, and saying goodbye to your family, all for a shot at digging up gold. That's what thousands of people did. And while some found riches, most were chasing a dream that would never come true. But that's the thing about dreams, isn't it? Even if they seem impossible, they're worth chasing. The gold rush wasn't just about gold. It was about hope. And for many, that was enough to take the leap. Getting to California was no small feat. Back in the day, there were no planes, no highways, and no GPS to guide you. People had two choices: travel overland across the country or sail around the tip of South America. Both options, absolute nightmares. The overland route meant months of walking or riding in wagons through scorching deserts, freezing mountains, and rivers with no bridges. People ran out of food, got sick, or lost their wagons in the wild. Many didn't survive the journey. Sailing wasn't much better. It could take 6 months or more to get to California by ship. And that's if storms didn't wreck you or disease didn't take hold on board. But hey, what's a little seasickness compared to the promise of gold, right? No matter how they got there, everyone shared one thing: the determination to make it. These people weren't just chasing gold. They were chasing the American dream, even if the road or the sea was paved with hardship. When miners finally made it to California, they quickly realized the work was far from glamorous. You didn't just walk up to a river and start scooping gold with your hands. Nope. It took hours of back-breaking labor to even find a speck. Miners used pans, picks, and sluices to sift through dirt and water. It was messy, exhausting, and rarely rewarding. Some hit jackpots, sure, but most barely made enough to cover their expenses. And if you were unlucky, you'd leave with less than you came with. And let's not forget about the weather. Blazing heat in the summer, freezing cold in the winter, it didn't matter. The hunt for gold didn't stop. These people were tough, but even the toughest had their breaking point. Still, every now and then, someone would find a nugget so big, it'd keep everyone else dreaming. That's what made the gold rush so addictive. The chance, no matter how slim, that you could strike it rich too. Where there's gold, there's people. And where there's people, there's towns. Places like San Francisco exploded overnight, going from tiny settlements to booming cities packed with miners, merchants, and everything in between. These towns were wild. Saloons lined the streets, gambling dens stayed open all night, and fights broke out over the smallest disagreements. If you're picturing the Wild West, you're spot on. Law and order? Barely a thing back then. But it wasn't all chaos. These boom towns were also places of opportunity. Entrepreneurs made fortunes selling tools, food, and clothes to miners who didn't have time to go shopping. Some say the real gold was in running a business, not mining. By the mid-1850s, San Francisco had become the heart of the gold rush. It was loud, dirty, and full of life. A place where anything felt possible, for better or worse. Now, when you think of the gold rush, you probably picture a bunch of guys digging in the dirt. And yeah, that's mostly true. But women were there too, and they played a huge role in shaping this era. Some women traveled west with their families, helping to build homes and communities in the wild. Others came alone, looking for independence and opportunity in a world where women rarely had either. In boomtowns, women opened businesses like boarding houses, laundries, and even restaurants. These businesses were often way more profitable than mining. Why? Because miners were willing to pay a fortune for a hot meal or a clean shirt. There were also women who became legends in their own right, performers, gamblers, and even a few outlaws. They proved that the gold rush wasn't just a man's game. It was a chance for anyone willing to take a risk. For all its excitement, the gold rush had a darker side. Native American tribes who had lived on this land for centuries were pushed out as miners claimed territory. Their lands were destroyed, their resources taken, and their lives forever changed. The environment also took a massive hit. Rivers were rerouted, forests were cut down, and mountains were blasted apart in the search for gold. The scars left by mining can still be seen in California today. Then there was the violence. Disputes over gold claims often ended in gunfights. With little law enforcement, justice was rough and often unfair. It was survival of the fittest, and sometimes the most ruthless. So yeah, the gold rush wasn't all shiny nuggets and dreams come true. For every success story, there were countless tales of loss, hardship, and destruction. The California gold rush wasn't just a local phenomenon. It turned into a global event that brought people from every corner of the world to the same dusty hills and rivers. Imagine the buzz. News of gold traveled fast, reaching countries like China, Chile, Australia, and even remote villages in Europe. It wasn't just Americans dreaming of riches. The entire globe caught the fever. One of the largest groups to arrive were the Chinese. By 1852, over 20,000 Chinese immigrants had reached California, hoping to carve out a better life. They worked incredibly hard, often taking on jobs that other miners didn't want, digging abandoned claims or washing gravel for tiny flecks of gold. But their journey wasn't easy. They faced prejudice, violence, and harsh laws meant to limit their success, like the foreign miners' tax, which charged immigrants extra fees to mine. Still, they persevered. building tight-knit communities and leaving a lasting legacy in California. The gold rush also attracted people from Latin America, especially Mexico, Peru, and Chile. These miners, known as Californios or Sonorans, were often highly skilled and brought advanced mining techniques with them. Their expertise gave them an edge in the early days of the rush. But just like the Chinese, they faced discrimination and violence from American miners who saw them as competitors. Despite the challenges, they played a key role in shaping the mining culture of the time. But it wasn't just about the people who came. It was also about what they brought. Cultures mixed in a way that had never been seen before. You had Chinese immigrants introducing their cuisine, Latin Americans bringing their traditions, and Europeans sharing their engineering skills. California became a true melting pot, a preview of what it would eventually grow into. This blending of cultures laid the foundation for California's diversity, something it's still known for today. And then there was the ripple effect. The gold rush pushed industries to innovate. Ships were redesigned for faster travel. Tools and machinery became more efficient, and banks expanded to handle the flow of gold. Even newspapers became more important, as people scrambled for the latest updates on gold discoveries. In many ways, the gold rush accelerated the pace of progress, turning California into a hub of innovation. By the late 1850s, the California gold rush had lost its shine, literally and figuratively. The easy-to-find gold, the kind you could pan from a riverbed, was mostly gone. The rush that had started with individual miners and small-scale operations now shifted to large corporations with expensive machinery and deep pockets. These companies brought in hydraulic mining, a process that blasted water at high pressure to wash away hillsides and expose gold buried deep underground. While it was effective, it came with a cost. The environmental damage was staggering. Rivers were clogged with sediment, farmland was destroyed by flooding, and entire landscapes were left unrecognizable. It was no longer the dream of striking it rich with your own two hands. It was big business, and regular folks couldn't compete. For the 49ers who had braved the journey west, the end of the gold rush was bittersweet. Many left California, broke and disillusioned. They had risked everything, time, money, even their lives, only to come up empty-handed. But not everyone left. Some stayed, trading their mining tools for farming equipment or opening businesses in the booming towns and cities. The gold rush may have ended, but California's growth was just beginning. San Francisco, for example, became a powerhouse. What started as a tiny port town with a handful of residents turned into a bustling city, practically overnight. The wealth generated during the gold rush helped finance infrastructure, schools, and businesses, turning California into a central player in the U.S. economy. And then there were the unintended consequences. The Native American population suffered greatly during the gold rush. Their lands were taken, their resources depleted, and their communities devastated by disease and violence. What had once been their home became unrecognizable, a harsh reminder that progress often comes with a price. By 1855, the gold rush was officially over, but its impact would last forever. California had transformed from a remote, unimportant territory into the Golden State, a land of opportunity, innovation, and ambition. It wasn't just a chapter in history, it was the foundation for what California would become, a place where dreams, no matter how big or impossible, always feel worth chasing. The gold rush wasn't just a moment in history. It was a spark that ignited the transformation of California and left a legacy that still resonates today. It wasn't only about the gold. It was about the spirit of the people who chased it, the dreams they carried, and the challenges they faced to carve out a better life. California itself became a symbol of opportunity, earning its nickname, the Golden State, thanks to this transformative era. The gold rush brought people from all over the world, each one adding a thread to the cultural fabric that defines the state today. This diversity, born out of a shared desire for something greater, became one of California's greatest strengths and lasting marks on American identity. But the legacy of the gold rush isn't just in the people or the culture, it's also in the lessons it taught. It showed the power of hope and ambition, but also revealed the consequences of unchecked greed and exploitation. From the destruction of the environment to the displacement of Native American tribes, the gold rush reminds us that progress often comes with a cost, and it challenges us to seek balance in the pursuit of our goals. Today, the gold rush lives on in museums, historical landmarks, and even the ghost towns that dot the California landscape. But its spirit is most alive in the idea of chasing dreams, no matter how big or impossible they may seem. Whether it's tech startups in Silicon Valley or the endless creativity of Hollywood, California remains a place where ambition thrives. And it all started with a simple dream: the glimmer of